Learn to give what was best, not out of surplus, but out of joy and generosity. You have to be a good follower to be a good leader.
Yeah.
So a person who, one, doesn't have the humility for followership, in my opinion, has already disqualified themselves from leadership.
Hello, everyone. Good to have you on my podcast once again. My name is Ukamaka, and if you're joining me for the first time, you're duly welcome. I appreciate you. And today I have a I call her the big fish when it comes to global leadership. She is multidisciplinary professor. She's been to different continents, and her work spans across gender and women's studies. It spans across culture and the impact of culture in different contexts. It spans across and not limited to when you talk about business and international development. I have here no other person but Dr. Ruth Anaya. Dr. Ruth, I'm deeply honored to have you here today. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm humbled and honored to have you here. I know you have a very, very busy schedule, but for you to squeeze out time to come here, I'm so honored. And if you're listening right now, please pay attention, because Dr. Ruth has wealth of knowledge in different contexts, as I have just read out. So just pay attention and let her just take us on a ride. Thank you, Dr. Ruth. Was it hard for you to schedule today? Because I know your calendar is packed.
It is, but it's always a joy to meet with you.
Thank you.
And I love sharing what I've learned.
Thank you so much.
Because I think I teach out of my experiences.
Thank you so much. You know, I get so fascinated and get so motivated whenever you leave the class. I wonder how you were able to do all the things you did, and it started so early, so young. Can you tell us how your journey started?
I guess one of the key markers of my life is the word global. And my own family is very global in terms of history and lineage as well as today. And so my nuclear family in my own city is extremely small. But I think of my global worldview and how that was impacted both by my personal parents' history, independently of as mom and dad, and how that came together here in Canada, but also how as a child, I grew up with a global worldview. We were talking always about, stories from around the world and involvement and engagement with the rest of the world through particularly humanitarian initiatives and ventures and giving to the point of sacrifice. And so that kind of is a mark of my parents that they've left on me and my siblings, my sisters, is that we kind of think very globally, and what can we offer to the world that is generous and that is a measure that basically can address some of their needs, not because I have surplus or more than I need, but because they have a right to it as much as I do. And my privilege is, maybe the only privilege, is that I was born in a country that had more opportunities and more resources. And so I feel a really strong sense of accountability to that.
So do you feel, like you mentioned so much about how you were brought up, so does it mean that culture had an influence into how you were able to be generous enough to share when even you don't have so much? Was that the culture at a particular time where you were living? I
think so. And I guess in that case, it would be kind of a subgroup. So my parents being immigrants, they didn't come out of abundance. So everything was, you worked for it. And you always worked for what was best, and you always learned to give what was best, not out of surplus, but out of joy and generosity. And I think generosity is a perspective of how we see the other person. Not how we see ourselves, other than accountability, but how we see the other person. And they don't have to earn a gift. They just have they should be as rightful recipients of, let's say, the basics, as I, who was born here. Okay, Dr. Ruth, thank you so much for this beautiful story you have just shared with us. I think parents have a lot of work to do when it comes to inculcating into their children how to be generous. I think it starts from when you're young. Otherwise, you grow up to become a very stingy individual. And as much as you want to have, if you don't have the culture of giving, you can never have, even when you have surplus. You will never have to give. Thank you so much. Agree.
And do you think you delving into global leadership has it really impacted the way you see the world from a particular lens? Has it really done so much for you?
It has. So, for instance, I've lived or traveled in or worked in approximately 50 countries of the world.
Wow.
So literally almost every continent, and to different degrees, to some degrees very, very extensively, particularly Central America and East Africa.
Wow.
And so when the plane lands and my foot touches the ground, I feel like I'm a different person. Like I literally walk differently, respond to my environment differently, use different linguistic cues, because English is basically in all parts of the world, and at my level of work, I'm really working with a combination of fellow leaders in those countries as well as grassroots individuals. And so when it comes to grassroots, I might not know the language. It might be ethnic and tribal, but I still have ways in which I can connect with that. Yeah. And I always have those people who are local, who are bridge builders in terms of linguistics, connecting me to that particular environment. Yeah. It might be a project, it might be a program. It can be a variety of domains. It could be in health, in education, in agriculture, or in business. But I literally feel like I'm there and I'm one of them. And so having multiple identities, especially over time, I've built multiple identities. So I can kind of be selective as to which identity am I going to choose. And then when I'm on location, I choose an identity that is the best for basically thinking on how do we solve a problem or how do we move a project forward. Yeah. And so I'm not using my professor academic identity when I'm in, a remote part of the world and I'm addressing a particular challenge on that. I think my academic identity gives me an entry point at the very beginning of, let's say, looking at an initiative or something, because it gives me the validity and the permission, in a sense, to bring something, to offer something. Yeah. But once I'm there, then I shift identities and I become a fellow human being. I become a mother, a wife, a teacher, not a professor, right? I take on identities that are understood and that are respected in order to be able to share something.
Beautiful. I love the part that you said you integrate with the people. You change and become who you are as long as you have people on ground and you become a part of them. Does it have to do anything? Is there anything familiar to you in some parts of the world you've been to that make you so integrated and rooted in their culture? As like you rightly said, you become part of them. What has made you take on that kind of fluidity in sense of adaptation? I
think when I identify someone else, a community or a person who shares my same core values, that I think is an immediate connection. Yeah. And so I think of really important values that are non-negotiables, like virtuous things like valuing the other person and the dignity of others, the value of hard work, the value of honesty. And generosity, hospitality. Yeah. And again, we could go on into many things. So I would identify what are their values, and when we have shared values, then we can come together very easily in terms of putting our heads and hands together, in terms of tackling a problem, in terms of, let's say, maybe working on a project or a goal that has to do with a particular sector that might make a meaningful difference in the community. Yeah.
This is beautiful. And I don't know how you were able to do these things effortlessly. Like don't you miss home when you go to different ends of the world and you integrate immediately? Don't you ever miss home? What keeps you going?
I do. Well, I missed home when I really started my international work. My children were 8 and 12.
Oh my.
And so I would spend up to 2 to 4 months sometimes overseas.
Oh my.
And not always in one location. So it would be in different parts of the world. And so they were so young that my husband maintained the home fires, taking them to school, picking them up after school, all those domestic things. But we agreed that this is important. We both share the same goal.
Yeah.
It's just at that season of life we could not both be overseas at the same time.
Yeah.
And so some of the places in the world we've been able to do right from young. So for instance, in East Africa, my children were first exposed to East Africa and to their family there at the age of 8 and 12.
Okay.
And so they were able to develop a worldview and an understanding of being comfortable in the village, being comfortable chasing after chickens. And we laugh about that today because my youngest would love to chase chickens, on the family farm in East Africa, north of Lake Victoria.
That's Kenya?
That's Kenya.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
And so we did that annually. And so depending on where I was in the world, in contrast to Central America, my husband visited it for the first time very recently because, again, of the need to maintain home here and then, of course, to also be present in another part of the world. So the beauty of today's technology allows us to connect. So right now, my husband's overseas. I plan to go overseas in a couple of weeks. But he's there for several months right now. But we can connect multiple times in the day because we've got FaceTime.
Yeah.
When we first started international work, I would buy SIM cards and they would give me X number of hours, but they were expensive.
Yeah.
And depending on what part of the world, the expense varies.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you just connect to hear somebody's voice.
Yeah.
But I think what grounded us in all of this was just the connection to this is what we give our life to, is to making a positive difference in the world for others. And we shared the same thing between my husband and I. And so sometimes the feasibility of that meant that we could actually physically do international development together. Other times it's like right now I'm supporting him in agricultural projects in East Africa. He supported me in my multi-sector projects for the 20 years that I worked in Central America.
Wow. Dr. Anaya, I know you are so versatile and so well knowledgeable in areas that are global when it comes to leadership. Can you tell me, or can you share with the world how your experience has helped you maintain something that I find it so, I desire to know how women can take on leadership roles when we know that there is this dichotomy when it comes to giving women the space at the top. How has your work helped, or have you experienced any disenfranchisement when it comes to giving you an opportunity to lead, and how you were able to step over it or step above it?
One of the things that I remember thinking of, like, how can I get a passport to the world? As a young university student, how can I get a passport to the world? Because I had always this drive for advocacy and for the world and for peoples of the world, not just safaris, which are the bonus when I travel. But and so I was thinking language will give that to me. So I studied the 4 main colonial languages, thinking that will give me access. Today I would make different language choices in terms of what I study. The other thing is, I think 2 careers that, again, give global access would be health and education.
Okay.
And so I've pursued education not as an intentional thing, but just because of my love for learning. So I never intended to be a teacher or a professor.
Oh, wow.
It's just that the doors opened and the invitations came my way. And so I'm walking through an open door. So I was actually an international global trainer for Mediterranean Europe and the Caribbean and continental Europe when I got the invitation, would I teach at a university in Nairobi? And so, yes, so I've just really walked through open doors. So what gave me the open door? So education, again, gives you that access to the world. But in terms of as a woman, I think a credential that gives you access, anybody access, is, again, having educational qualifications that are higher than what the environment, what is found in the social environment of a given place. And so if I go to parts of Africa or Central America, the fact that I am a professor or have a doctorate, they think of me, very often they'll think Dr. Anaya, they think medical doctor,
Oh,
right? That's
yeah.
the first thing.
Yeah, that comes to
Even my father-in-law thought, doctor, somebody to solve our medical challenges. But so an academic education really gives me access to much of the world. And so as a woman, I can overcome the traditional hurdles in those locations because both of those parts of the world are very patriarchal.
Yeah.
Very patriarchal.
Yeah.
But the fact that, so really they're looking at me as a professional first and not as a woman. So the fact that I'm a woman is really secondary. So it kind of really doesn't take away the opportunity that being a teacher and then a higher level teacher really offered me. But I know when I started my graduate studies in East Africa, I had 3 strikes against me.
Oh.
And one was that I was a female, right? Because if I were a male, I'd have the red carpet laid out for me. And in my case, I had to earn the right to speak or the right to have influence. It wasn't given to me, it had to be earned. And so I think this is this discrepancy in leadership where women really have to perform, and to this very day, we have to perform at a higher level than males who for the same job. But that is actually harder in my home country here in North America. I feel that I'm much more respected internationally than I am at home because education is so highly valued in other parts of the world, and that because I have it, that it kind of gives me an open door.
What do you mean that you're more appreciated elsewhere than home?
More honored, where, for instance, in hierarchical cultures that are also collective, they understand the responsibility of leadership, and they also understand their role in a particular space. And so, for instance, they're very often obliging, and even if they're participatory, because I need to bring myself down, they cannot bring themselves up. I need to bring myself down. So it's up to me to level that playing field, and it's up to me to say, you can call me Ruth, or, I walk with them. I don't take so one example would be in the village, where if we're going a distance, they don't need to call the local taxi to move me from one place to another. I'm willing to walk with the other villagers to our next destination. Okay, so it's up to me to level that expectation that I'm no better. I have some knowledge that I want to share with you, and they're willing and they're eager to receive it. But it's up to me to kind of level that playing field. And so, and also, so they give me the position, and I think collective cultures know what it is to honor position and place. We don't have that sense of honor, nowhere near as much as I see in the global South.
So what could be causing the gap in this part of the world? Because
we are very egalitarian, there is also no sense of understanding the importance of honoring, or let me even say respecting leaders in courteous and kind ways. How we interact with leaders is, well, you're no better than I am.
Oh, wow.
And so, for instance, I understand that from a human perspective of we have inherent value and we all have the same dignity. We have we should have access to the same rights, certain basic human rights. But we've lost this sense of equality, kind of also has given people a sense of entitlement. And that entitlement means that, I have every right to be first in line. So, for instance, here, when we line up at the grocery store, there's no differentiation. So when I'm overseas, people see me as the foreigner. I'm very easily identifiable. If they know me, they'll honor me even more. But it's like I'll say, I'll stand in line just like everybody else, right? So that's, again, and then they respect me for that. Sometimes they challenge me. It's like, another big thing is sitting on the stage. It's like, the seat of honor, you need to sit on the stage. Well, I'm fine with the audience. I don't have a role in the program, so I'm totally fine to sit in the audience. But at the same time, I understand the value of honoring leaders, and I will comply out of respect for their culture.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. And so I think what's important in leadership is that whether men or women, to recognize how does the local culture, how do they think, what do they value, what do they honor, and to be able to be comfortable with that and to be obliging in that. And then to move them perhaps from a point of distance, because they do put this distance of honor is a distance. And now you can, through relationship, actually bring things together where they see you as one of them. And to me, that's the greatest compliment, is when they see me as one of them.
Yeah. So there's this concept of Ubuntu. How does did you ever use it in your work, wherever you're overseas? Or how, I want you to share, but before you share that, I want you to unpack how you were able to understand the Ubuntu term and how much impact it's made in your own knowledge of global leadership and culture. How did it make impact in you as a person? Then I want you to now unpack how you were able to, if you ever used it in your work whilst overseas.
Okay, so Ubuntu basically means I am because we are.
Yeah.
So basically we see our own identity in the collective identity.
Yeah.
I actually had that concept already from my own background here in Canada, because of how my parents viewed the world and how they viewed themselves in the world. Okay, so really I would say that was already, they didn't use the word, but conceptually and behaviorally, that was already part of my worldview.
Oh, nice.
And so I would say, yes, it does impact how I see myself and others, because I see privilege not connected to power or position, but as something that is a gift that others give you. And as a gift, you're not entitled to that. You know, it is a gift. And I think when you're given a gift, you also honor that gift. So first of all, the gift is given as an honor, and then to recognize that this is privileged space. And it's not that I deserve it. It's because I am granted this incredible opportunity or this gift. So when I do international development work, the fact that I'm invited into their lives and into their communities is, to me, I see that as a privilege. For me, they see me as an answer, you know, as a solution to their problems, or also as a gift, perhaps, to them. But it very quickly becomes a transformational exchange. It's not a one-way road, it's a two-way road. And so the things that they give me are different than I give them, but nonetheless, it is an exchange. It's two-way. So you asked the question, have I used it in my work?
Yeah.
I have used it in my academic writing.
Oh, nice.